Good morning, my loves. Let it be clear that you should never miss a message because of verbiage or even differences in belief systems. When I say things from a perspective of what God is doing, that doesn't matter what it means to me, and it doesn't matter what it means to you. Don't get so caught up in religion or spirituality or even verbiage, even language, that you miss the meat of what's actually being presented. Sometimes when you are being used by God, the divine source, the universe, it's gonna hurt. And the reason for that is that sometimes when you are impacting a person's life in a way that they are unaccustomed to, it can be very triggering, even when the way that you're impacting them is positive, even when what's happening is pleasant. Sometimes it can be very triggering to people who are unaccustomed to being impacted that way. Sometimes you are going to hit their tender points, and sometimes they are going to open you up to their pain. Sometimes being involved in other people's lives is going to uncover certain traumas, certain baggage, certain feelings, certain experiences that perhaps in the past that person has not been ready to face, ready to process. And so you may be met with someone who ends up betraying you, or talking behind your back, tearing you down, rejecting you, resisting you. And all of these are trauma responses. The more intimate the space is that you're sharing, and I don't mean intimate as far as sexual or romantic, I just mean intimate as in close. When you open your life up to another person, understand that sometimes there is going to be also an opening of the floodgates. Those people are going to dump their trauma on you because maybe you've been the first place that felt safe enough for them to actually expose it. And a lot of times you get caught in the crossfire of the war between them and themselves. Some people have never experienced love. And before you say, well, I haven't either, because a lot of us get to a point in life where we feel like we have, as we've gone through life, but looking back, we're like, I never really have experienced true, genuine, pure, unadulterated love, right? Unconditional love. A lot of us haven't. Some people would say most of us haven't. A lot of people don't even believe that type of love exists. People who have never experienced love, or who believe they've never experienced love, because sometimes you'll be faced with it, but you don't know how to recognize it, and so you don't notice it. And so perhaps you have and you just didn't know. People are impacted differently by lacking love. Some people become free-flowing givers of it. We pour it out everywhere that we can in hopes that one day it will be reciprocated. One day someone will appreciate the love that we give so much that they will be motivated to give it back in the same measure. And so that becomes the motivation for showing up in the lives of other people. But some people are not impacted that way. Some people are affected by lacking love in a way that makes them distrusting and fearful and avoidant and closed off. And even those of us who are, or who consider ourselves to be open, still have walls of our own, still have protection, still have coping mechanisms, still have those defensive strategies that are so subconscious that we may not even realize it. But You can only be as open in interpersonal connections as you are open with yourself. And so if there are parts of yourself that you don't even know you have shut your own self off from, then you're never going to actually open those places up to other people, because you may not even know they exist. As you go through life, you uncover so much about yourself as you connect with other people, and as you learn other people, and as you see yourself in other people. I know that in this day and age where, we are so analytical and we are so psychological and we are always evaluating and judging, and, we have all of these rules and boundaries and, beliefs about how things should look and what we should tolerate and what we should cut off and what red flags are and how we should handle that. And what I want to just challenge you to consider today is that maybe everything is not as it seems. I want to be real careful with this, because I'm not in any way encouraging people to accept abuse or misuse or manipulation or intentionally inflicted pain, right? I'm not saying to put yourself under the iron to try to help or heal other people who may or may not be ready for that help or healing. But what I am saying is, don't be so quick to make snap judgments just because someone hurt you and assume that their intentions were malicious. Because in even the healthiest relationships, we are going to hurt each other. And I don't mean relationships as, like I said, romantic relationships. I mean relationships as we relate to one another. There are always going to be ways that the people that you engage and interact with can potentially hurt you. In platonic relationships, in romantic relationships, in professional relationships, it is largely unavoidable because we are imperfect, we are human. Don't be so quick to cut people off or to stop trying just because things get difficult, or just because people have triggers, or just because people have defenses, or just because things don't go the way that you expect or the way that you want. Be more willing to have patience, to have compassion, to have understanding, to look to the root of things, to evaluate people's patterns. We all are looking for the same thing. I truly believe that love is healing, and that is what people who are in pain are lacking and needing the most. And so the more that we show up for each other, the more that we allow these connections to sort of bust ourselves open, the more that we learn ourselves, the more that we learn each other, the easier it is going to be to sort of get on the same side of all these walls that we have up. And I'm not saying that people are ever going to just, step outside of the boundaries that they have, or the walls that they've created for themselves, because those things aren't entirely unhealthy. The world can be a dangerous place, right? And some people do have very malicious intentions, and that comes from a place of pain too. But when you have someone who is truly devoid of the capacity for empathy, the capacity for love, the capacity for, compassion, you are much more likely to be absolutely destroyed by a person like that and them never give a shit than you are somebody who is simply operating in their pain but still has a capacity to care. I encourage you to be really aware of the judgments that you make, because a lot of the ways that we see people are reflections and projections of what's going on inside of us, of the things that we really don't want to face about ourselves. A lot of the things that you recognize in other people are things that you may not realize are direct reflections of you, because as I often say, most people are in some form or fashion. Even the people that you consider to be the worst people in your life, there are ways that they reflect yourself back to you. And so there are always things that you can learn. Establishing and enforcing healthy boundaries is an absolute must. I'm not saying let everybody in your personal space. And that's something that I've had to learn the hard way, because I never really learned how to set healthy boundaries. I let people just cross every line for most of my life. And so I'm still in that space where I'm learning to do that. And I'm sort of figuring out that not everybody can be allowed access to my personal space. Some people have to be kept at a distance, no matter how much I love them, no matter how close they are to me. Even the people that God is using you to impact, not all of them are going to be able to get unfettered access to you. But ultimately, your life's journey is not about any of them. The people who mean you the best, the people who mean you well, are still going to show up painfully in some parts of your story, and that is just absolutely unavoidable. There is a somatic sense of whether a person's love is genuine. And a lot of times our biggest problem is that we ignore when we feel that it's not, because we want it to be so bad. And so it can be a really confusing experience, and it can be really difficult. But understand that every single experience that you have in life can be used for your benefit. I am not a religious person by any means, but I do take what is useful, what resonates. And one thing that I do absolutely believe is that all things work out to the favor of people who have faith. Whatever your faith is, whatever your belief system is, if you truly believe, that faith has power. And you can always find a benefit in every experience, no matter how traumatic, no matter how terrifying, no matter how tragic, no matter how damaging. It can always work to your benefit if you believe that. Don't allow the fact that things don't feel good, the fact that maybe things hurt, to discourage you from showing up in other people's lives or from being used for a bigger purpose. There's always a spiritual experience going on, and there's always a shifting, and there's always a molding, and there's always, everything that you experience changes you in some way, and everything that other people experience with you changes them in some way. No matter how things go, no matter how confusing it may be, things come into your life for a reason. Choose to be the light. I love you guys, and I hope you have a fantastic and impactful day.